Welcome to Ready, Set, Kindergarten, a short podcast by Chattanooga 2.0 for parents of rising kindergartners in Hamilton County, Tennessee. We're here to share helpful, real-world advice from local experts that you can trust. Today, we're diving into a topic that matters to every family, screen time. Is screen time all that bad? How much is too much, and what's actually helpful for kids heading into kindergarten? Today, we're asking three experts to weigh in, a pediatrician, a parenting coach, and a psychologist, to help us understand what matters most when it comes to screens and little brains. Dr. Alan Coffman of Highland Pediatrics has been practicing locally for 23 years and served as president of the Tennessee chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Lauren Hall is president of the local nonprofit First Things First, a parenting coach and a mom of two young kids who writes a weekly column on family for the Times Free Press. Dr. Beth Capici is a private practice psychologist from Grounded Counseling who has been practicing locally for 22 years and works with adolescents and adults across a variety of issues. I'm your host, Jennifer Andrews, and I am both a mom of a rising kindergartner and the director of early childhood strategies for the nonprofit Chattanooga 2.0. For the last 2.5 years, our organization has been working with community partners to equip parents of rising kindergartners like you with tips and tools to set your children up for success in school and life. To read our experts' full bios, see the podcast description. Now we're going to dive in and let the experts tell us what they know. To start, we'll hear from Dr. Alan Coffman of Highland Pediatrics. Dr. Coffman, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's great to be here.
So we're going to dive right into the topic of screen time. Parents receive a lot of mixed messages, and I hear that there's new information out there from the American Academy of Pediatrics. So can you tell us how much screen time is okay for a 4 or 5-year-old, and what are the 5 C's of media use?
Well, it expands kind of how to think about it with your child. And so the first C is for your child. And so think about who they are, what do they struggle with, what are their strengths and weaknesses. So some children are very interested in screens. That's someone that it may be a lot of work to help navigate them in their introduction to screens and how they manage them. Some kids don't even notice screens. And so those children are a lot easier. The second C is for content. So being very thoughtful about what kind of content is appropriate for my child. I really encourage parents of preschoolers and kindergartners to view all the content that their children watch and be very careful about the platforms that they use. Do those send them on to other things that they might not know are coming? The third C is for calm. And so an important part of our children's day is to how do you calm down? So as you go out into the world and have experiences and have stress and have fun and joy, how do you bring your body back to a state of calm? And so that's something that needs to be coached. And often screens can get in the way of that process. And so knowing your child and how they calm down, what are the ways that your family does that? And does that fit with how you're using screens? The fourth C is for crowding out. And so as I tell my parents and kids that all the important stuff in life is pretty boring. And so things like eating healthy and sitting with your family and eating, stopping and going to the restroom, going to bed at night, all of those get pushed out by much more entertaining things like screens. And so being careful about, what does that look like? And I think for parents, even the most important things like spending time that's quality with your child, where they learn to play, where they learn to talk about their day, where they learn to label things and talk about their emotions. Often that will get pushed out with screen times, and often how children need to be comforted. So being able to sit or even have a healthy tantrum, for the parent to be present in that and to come off of some stress and to regroup and to rejuvenate their own emotions. Often children will want to use screens to do that. And so being very careful about how that plays out with your own child. And then the last C is communication. So even with a 3, 4, 5-year-old, talking to them about what screens are to them. Often I'll take breaks from screens and talk to children about what's different in their life when the screens are there and when they're not. And a 3-year-old can understand that. A 5-year-old definitely can understand that. A 5-year-old can start to talk about content, specifically things that might not be healthy for them. So violence or sexuality, things that, and the great thing about a 5-year-old, if something is off, that they're going to tell you. And so you'll definitely hear about those things. And so having an open line of communication with your child about why we use screens, what you're trying to accomplish, and then how that affects them.
Awesome. So how much is too much? Is there a number for that?
I don't think so. I think watching your child, I think when you see your child getting louder, when you see social interactions getting more difficult, when you try to move your child away from a screen, the reactions that they have, and that's going to be different for every child. So I had one child who she really didn't care. And so as a young child, that was not a difficult thing. I had another who we knew if he had more than 12 minutes of screen time, he was going to be a different person. Mm-hmm. And so I think watching for those changes, and you notice when you're watching how a child responds.
And one thing you said, I would love for you to expand on. You said a healthy tantrum. So tantrums are, can you just talk a little bit more about what's a healthy tantrum?
Yeah. So, I think one of the fundamental things as you interact with a 3, 4, 5-year-old is to realize they think they're an adult. And so they watch you. And so if there's behaviors that you want in a child, behaviors that you don't want in a child, you need to model those. And so when children get upset, they are going to verbalize that. They're going to vocalize that being upset. And being upset is fine. Like, it's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be jealous. And so I try to communicate that with children, having that open dialogue that you are allowed to be frustrated. And some of your best teaching is going to be when your child is angry, frustrated, where you can see what they're responding to and you can speak to that, giving them time to work through those emotions in a healthy way. So things like we're at the dinner table and I don't know why, but my child is starting to melt down and I'm losing them. And I'll verbalize it. You seem frustrated. You seem upset. We're going to take a break. I always verbalize that you're not in trouble. Mom and dad are not mad at you. We're going to go to our room, and we have different ways where we can manage that. So we can work on breathing. We can work on play alone with your favorite toys. We can work on reading. We can listen to music. We can work on breathing. All those are ways that you can help a child kind of learn to that. But they have to do it. You can't do it for them. And so often that takes time. And often it's quite annoying because they're not going to just jump up and do that. And so they may choose other things like screaming, hitting, kicking the door. And so we need to talk about what are the boundaries as we manage our emotions, giving them some room to not do that perfectly. I think it's very hard with your first child because you've not seen it before. Uh-huh. It does get easier, as you've seen that, and we kind of respond in a more appropriate way. I think the difficulty with school-age children or preschool children and kindergarten children is that often we speak to them like adults. And so they're starting to talk like adults and they're starting to think like adults. And then we speak to them like adults and they try to keep up. And that can be very stressful for a 4 and 5-year-old. And then the hack with 4 and 5-year-olds is not letting them realize that we're at a decision point in the day. So anytime we get to a place where we're transitioning, so we're playing and now we're going to get in the car and go to school, or we're playing and we're going to stop playing, wash our hands and eat lunch, or we're playing and we're going to get ready for bed. And if that's a sudden change, children will want to negotiate that transition. Mm-hmm. And so often that can be uncomfortable. It can get in the way. It can be inefficient. And so what I like to do is I'm always giving my 4 and 5-year-olds the next 4 or 5 things that are going to happen. And so, for example, I'll say, okay, you're going to go play right now. Have a good time. In a few minutes, I'm going to say it's time for lunch. And then we'll stop play. We're going to clean up. We're going to go wash our hands. And then we'll sit at the table and we'll eat lunch. And then once it's time for lunch, I'll say, all right, it's time to stop play. We're going to go wash our hands. We're going to sit at the table, eat lunch. And then you're going to help me clean up. And then we're going to stop and try to go to the bathroom. And so you're always giving them the expectation and the clear guidance for what's going to happen. That really decreases that pushback and those opportunities for stress. And then it helps them, they're more relaxed because they know what's happening.
Right.
When you have really bad transitions, so like, for example, in a kindergartner, going to bed at night is often a hard time. And so I'll build an even more rigid story, a social story about what happens at nighttime and break that down into the small steps that you want to happen. And I'm not exaggerating. I'll tell that story 200 times. So the child knows exactly what's going to happen. That really helps them be comfortable. It helps them be more relaxed with what's going on. They don't feel like they have to engage to try to manipulate the situation.
It's just the expectation of what's going to happen.
Yeah. And children really think they like the ritual. They like the rules. They kind of think it comes from, God or the universe or somewhere, And so it's not mom doing it. It's that's what we,
it's just what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think it's also important to really listen to yourself when you're in those situations. Anytime something's happening with a child and you feel yourself frustrated, angry, you don't like what's happening, often that says more about you than it does about the child. And I think it's very healthy to listen to yourself. Typically what's happening is you're tired or you've tried to do too much and we've gotten overextended. And I really try to listen to those moments and either, set your boundaries with a child sooner. So we're not 30 minutes down this road, kind of intervening earlier, or realizing that this always happens at 7:00 at night when I'm completely exhausted. And so how do we restructure our day so that I'm not so tired when we have these interventional problems?
So, Dr. Coffman, you said something when you were talking about the 5 C's of media use. You said that screens can get in the way of calm. What did you mean?
So, relaxing and letting your brain rest is an active activity. So, there's things that we need to do. You and I learned to do those on our own, so we had long periods of individual play by ourselves
when we were kids,
when we were children. And I had we had acres and acres of woods behind our house, and by myself I would go out and get lost and pull moss off trees and climb in trees and dig in the dirt and collect bugs, and so that's where you're learning to how do you calm. And then when you have no distractions, you're paying attention to your body, and so you learn to pay attention to how you feel and how do you modulate that. And so we learn those patterns through practice. We learn them culturally. So our parents show us how to do that. So, for example, the family after dinner going out and taking a walk together. That's a learned cultural relaxation technique. Learning to breathe or to sing together or to hold hands, learning to pray and meditate. Those are all culturally taught ways to relax. And so when the screens will often push that out. And so things that, when we normally would start to get irritable and people would notice, or I would start to notice that I'm getting irritable, that should trigger of what do I need to change? So I'm going to go excuse myself. I'm getting tired. I'm going to go sit for a little bit in my room. I'm going to go put some music on. I'm going to go read a book that I've been working on. I'm going to go take a hot shower. I'm going to go for a walk. Instead, what we do is we go to Instagram or we go to Netflix. And so now I'm being entertained and being stimulated when my brain should be relaxing and healing. And we never get that. And so then that leads to all kinds of changes in the way that our brains are set up neurochemically and can often lead to a lot of dysfunction later on in life.
That's great. Thank you. And great information for our parents of rising kindergartners to know. So as a pediatrician, is it safe to say that you know a lot about child development? I would say so.
I talk about it a lot.
Yeah. Perfect. So can you describe for us, what does screen time actually do to a young child's brain or their development, especially in these kind of year as they're getting ready for kindergarten?
So screens can be an amazing way to teach a child. So we know that children can learn things like empathy from Sesame Street. They can learn about other cultures. They can learn that there's families that are different than theirs, so they can appreciate kind of different ways to approach things. They can find community in a way that they might not normally find because their family structure may be rare in their community, and they can go on and watch something about a similar family structure somewhere else.
Right.
And it gives them more confidence and they feel more normal about who they are.
I'm not alone.
Yes. Yeah. This is not something that is weird. It can also be a great place to learn. So if your child is very interested in horses, you can find a lot of videos about different aspects of that. If they're interested in race cars, so it gives you a way to elevate their education and their imagination. So those are the great things that screens can do. Now, what they can also do is they can entertain you past the point of normal things that you need so they can distract. And so we know that children need to have downtime. They need to have kind of what we call board play. They need to have tactile play, things like, stacking blocks and taking things apart, and paper art and drawing and coloring and cutting and Play-Doh, and they need to be able to sit and not have the cognitive parts of their brains challenged while they're doing that. That's so the way that our brain kind of handles learning and stress is we go out, we have a very stimulating experience, your brain is stressed, and then we go have a more relaxing kind of bored period where our brain then brings all that in, processes it, manages it. And if you don't get that, then your brain can become unhealthy. Well, that's where you see anxiety. That's where you see ability to not filter yourself properly. And so some kids need more of that than others. And again, paying attention to what your child needs. But the difficulty is that often the screens are so entertaining that children will they will not pay attention to the fact that, like, I need to be quiet, or I need to rest, or I need to sleep, I need to go to the bathroom, I need to have some time to myself to recharge. I'm hungry, and we see a big shift. Like a reason we struggle with obesity is that what happens is that kids' eating response is more of a stress response as opposed to a hunger response. So they play, they go, they work hard at school, they come home, they're stimulated by entertainment or play on video games and those kinds of things. And their response to food is more kind of energy seeking. And so you see they prefer things like, fried foods, or they prefer carbohydrates as opposed to hunger seeking. And that's the kind of bored eating that you see in front of entertainment. And so, being very careful that we don't, you want to see food is at the table. Screens are an organized thing that's never mixed with eating, and being very thoughtful about managing those things.
Yeah, no, and we've actually heard that from kindergarten teachers in Hamilton County that they're noticing fewer and fewer kids are coming to the classroom having had those opportunities to do tactile play and color with crayons and finger paint and play with sand. So those are some great tips. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to turn to Lauren Hall at First Things First here in Chattanooga. Lauren, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So as parents, you and I both know that sometimes screens they're a part of everyday life.
Yep.
And for both children and adults, but sometimes it seems that screens can dominate our lives. And we just heard from a local pediatrician about the impact screens have on child development. Mm-hmm. But I also know as a parent that sometimes you just need a break.
Yep.
So, Lauren, as you often say, screen time isn't automatically bad. So can you talk about how parents can use screens in smart and healthy ways?
Absolutely. One of the biggest ways that we use screen time in our home is FaceTime, because we have family that live all over the nation. And so being able to FaceTime with our littles, especially 18 months and younger, when they live far away, they don't get to see the grandparents that often. It's really important to still have that FaceTime, even through the screen. That's such a great tool. And it can honestly spark creativity. It can increase knowledge and learning if you're using the right high educational programming and tools. Mm-hmm. So that's really important. And honestly, it can give parents that break. And I don't just mean using technology as a babysitter and saying, go in here with your tablet and sit down. But if you're looking for ways to engage with your child and it's hot outside or it's raining, use an educational show like a book and interact with them and talk to them about it. It gives you a way to connect with them. And yes, it's a screen, but if you're there, it's okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what's a good rule of thumb for what kind of screen time a rising kindergartner should have? And do you have any specific shows or apps or digital content that you'd actually recommend?
Yeah, so 2 to 5, and this is, the AAP recommends this, but no more than an hour a day. And they also recommend that you break that up in 10 to 15 minute segments. So that's really hard to do. Couple of things around that we practice in our house and we tell other parents at First Things First to do is find shows that are already in that 10 to 15 minute window. So Bluey Yes, it's a blue dog, but oh my goodness, it is rich. And if you're a parent, you know you want to watch Bluey when the kids go to bed too. But they're all 8-minute segments. And so when that turns off, you can talk about it for a little bit. What was that about? What did you enjoy about it? And if you want to start another one, that's okay. But it's a break for their brain too to process what they just saw. There's a lot of other shows, Stillwater, Frog and Toad Together, Tumbleleaf on Amazon, Jessie and Nessie. Those are all in 10 to 15-minute windows. So they kind of cut it off for you so you don't have to go in and say, okay, we're in the middle of the show, we're turning it off. The other thing is app-wise, because you asked about apps. A lot of people use Khan. Love Khan. It is a great app, and it's free.
And that's Kahn?
Kahn. Yes, thank you for spelling that. And another good one is Together Tells. So one thing about Together Tells, it's a new app, relatively. I guess it came out in the last year or so, but it allows parents and children to talk about emotions and practice emotional regulation in real time. So you go through activities such as deep breathing, counting. For anxiety, it walks you through how to be mindful and run through the 5 senses to pull you back into the present. And you record yourself doing it. And every single time you do it, it keeps a diary of your emotions. And the more you do it, the research behind the app has shown that it actually increases kids' capacity for emotional learning and regulation.
That's awesome.
It is. And I'd be amiss. I love Sesame Street. I can't stress that enough, partially because it's nostalgic, but also because there's new research that came out that showed if you use their digital resilience toolkit, do you know about it?
I have heard there's coloring sheets and all kinds of stuff, right?
It's fantastic. And in 12 weeks, it can help a preschooler, so right there at that kindergarten age, really practice self-control and emotional regulation. We use it in our home. We used it I have a 6-year-old, so it's been very helpful for him. He went into kindergarten last year. Big transition, but that toolkit saved us a lot of heartache, I think, in going into a school and doing something new. It really helped him build his toolkit.
That's amazing. What about like the PBS app?
PBS app in general, yes, it is fantastic, and it's ad-free too. So everything from games to just activities, you don't have to worry about something popping up that you don't want your child to see. That's one of the things about Sesame Street. It's on YouTube Kids, but they've segmented it out so that it doesn't have ads, which is great. You have to be very careful with that on the digital sphere of things.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing these resources with us. Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, Lauren, I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and sometimes they see movies that are scrolling on Netflix preview or something, or they see a preview on TV in a commercial, and they want to watch that movie, but I'm not sure if there's going to, be curse words or if it's just appropriate for young children. So, what advice do you have for parents who are just trying to make sure they don't have the time to watch the movie first? So, what advice would you give?
Yes, Common Sense Media. You can use it as an app or just look it up online. It is the Rotten Tomatoes for kid and appropriate developmental milestones as well. So it has filters. We use it every Friday night for our family movie night, but we look for age-appropriate movies and shows, 5 to 7, 2 to 5. If you've got multiple ages watching, you can tell it who's in your family and how old they are, and it'll recommend movies and shows to you. And then it will also do tags to show you what learning your child can receive through that media. So if you want to focus on numbers or letters or reading, or if it's social emotional, whether that's anxiety or anger, you can filter it through that as well, which is just such a huge tool.
Yeah, that's super handy. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we're going to hear from local psychologist Dr. Beth Capici. Dr. Beth, thanks for being here today.
I'm happy to be here.
So there's some popular books and documentaries out right now that talk about new research and how child development is impacted by screens. Can you describe for us what happens when screen time replaces that real-world play or connection in young children?
I think one of the big issues there is bonding with something that's not a person and having so many early primary, memories and stimuli that relate to a computer or a TV or a phone instead of the face-to-face bonding. So much of the development of kids relates to mirroring and neurons and developing, even just the mirror neurons of like facial expressions. And if you're looking at a screen, first of all, I'm not sure that blue light or any of that stuff is great for anyone at any age,
right.
But certainly these tiny developing brains, you want them to bond with people. And that's where attachment theory is such a big piece of, mental health and psychological health and connection and well-being. And so if kids are kind of being babysat, so to speak, or entertained by screens, it's just kind of not the right beginning or onset to their experience in this world, is to be connected to screens instead of people.
Yeah, that makes sense. So could you tell us, okay, I have a question about screen time and cranky kids. So when my own children, who are 5 and 7 now, watch a show or play a video game, I find that they are just so cranky, especially if I'm the one to turn off the screen time for them. So can you talk with us about what's happening to the brain when kids are locked in on screens and how we can support their transition back to the real world in a way that maybe won't result in a meltdown?
Right. I know more about the behavioral aspect of that than the medical brain science behind it. But if you think about that high stimulation and dopamine kind of rush, we're not meant to live life with these huge dopamine rushes all the time. And certainly like your kids might be playing video games or games, and it's like pleasure, entertainment,
bright lights flashing.
Yeah. Like extremely high stimulation. And it's just not natural. It's not sustainable. And it's like, whoever you want to say is producing these are trying to lure them in, trying to make them addicted. And anything by comparison might seem a little boring. It's also a big transition to go from just visual and auditory stimulation to just the real world, quiet, normal, natural stimulation. So I would think that the mixture of the addictive part of that and then just the high stimulation, it's like being weaned from a drug a little bit. Like a withdrawal.
So what can parents do if they want to, they allow some screen time, but then they don't want their kid to have a meltdown when screen time is over. So what could a parent do maybe to prevent the meltdown?
I think before they do this, and this kind of goes into some of what we're going to talk about on other episodes, the idea of identifying and labeling feelings and experiences and knowing what might happen. To say, last time I asked you, I gave you 30 minutes, and when it was time to get off, you were very cranky or rude or disrespectful. I know you were probably very disappointed and frustrated, but if that happens again, then we're probably going to have to take a break from this if you can't honor, the rules in a polite, respectful way. And just saying it's understandable, it's valid that you felt this way, but you can't throw a fit or be rude,
Validation, and then also setting some boundaries. I like it. Okay, those are some great tips, and I'm definitely gonna have to try some of those at home with my own rising kindergartner.
Oh, I know, it's so hard.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
For more quick tips and resources to support your rising kindergartner, like videos and an activity booklet, visit www.chatt2.org/K-Ready. And remember, with every story you read, skill you teach, or hug you give, you are the first and most influential teacher your child will ever have. Thank you for listening to the Ready Set Kindergarten podcast. And a huge thank you to the Chattanooga Public Library for allowing us to use their recording space and our 3 local experts.